Hey guys, this is going to be the story behind my emergency C-section. I had a C-section with my firstborn. I got pregnant whenever I was 20 years old. So my water broke at 2:50 in the morning. I had gotten up to go pee, which was normal for me. It was on Friday, the day I turned 39 weeks. So I got up at 2:50 in the morning to go potty, and I had gotten to the bathroom and I was just about to sit down and I felt liquid running down my leg. And I was like, okay, so people say that you pee yourself whenever you're pregnant. I hadn't yet, so I guess I'm getting to that point in my pregnancy where I'm going to start peeing myself. Didn't really think anything of it. I sat down, I went pee, I got back up, and I was walking back to bed, and it just kept coming out. And I was like, okay, that's not normal. I didn't have any pads, so I just grabbed a towel and I shoved it in my pants, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna wait 5 minutes and see what happens. Within 5 minutes, I pretty much filled up that towel. So after I had pretty much filled up that towel, after about 5 or 10 minutes, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna call my mom. So I called my mom and I was like, I'm thinking my water broke. I got up to go pee and this stuff will not stop coming out of me. It's not pee because I did go pee and I'm not quite sure what to do. So she's like, okay, well, do you need to call your doctor? Are you supposed to call your doctor whenever you think you're going into labor? Are you just supposed to go to the hospital? And I was like, I don't know. So I called the nurse line, the emergency on-call doctor or whatever, and they were like, it sounds like your water broke. Go ahead and get up to the hospital. And I was like, okay, well, is it okay if I labor at home for a little bit? And she was like, well, are you having contractions? And I was like, no, not really. I'm not having contractions yet, but I want to like walk around a little bit and see if I can start some contractions. And she was like, well, it's very important that we have this baby within 24 hours of your water breaking, so I think that it's best that you just come to the hospital. Okay, so we get in the car, got everything packed up, we're on our way to the hospital, and I did start having contractions on our way to the hospital. It was about a 30-minute drive to the hospital. We get to the hospital, and my husband brings out a wheelchair, and I stand up to get into the wheelchair, and it's like running into my flip-flop. And my husband was like, wow, your water broke. And I was like, no, really? Like, obviously, that's why I woke you up. That's why we're at the hospital, because my water broke. So we get into the triage. They check. Sure enough, it is my water. They send us up to a room, and my contractions weren't very strong. So they're like, okay, well, you know, we need to start you on Pitocin so we can get these contractions going. I didn't do my research. I was like, okay, that sounds perfect. Let's have a baby. And she was like, okay, well, do you also want me to call for an epidural? And I was like, that was just weird to me. Like, why would I need an epidural already? Like, no, I'm fine. I want to try my best to have a natural birth. They hooked me up to Pitocin. I think as soon as they put it in, they cranked it up to a 6, and I'm pretty sure that Pitocin goes from 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 is the highest you can go with Pitocin. Not sure, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that that's how that works, and as soon as they put me on Pitocin, they cranked it up to a 6. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't do my research. So I start having contractions. They get pretty severe. At around 10 o'clock, my mom had arrived, my sister had arrived, and I was having some painful contractions to the point where I was no longer able to breathe through them. I was crying and hyperventilating, kind of. It was really bad. They had checked me because I was like, oh, it hurts really bad. I know I'm pretty much there. Like, it's almost time to push a baby out. And they checked me, and I was only at a 5. So I wanted the epidural. Got the epidural, and that was fine. I didn't feel the epidural because the contractions were so bad, so I mean, that was great. And it did take the pain away. Like, it was like strong. Could not move at all. And that was actually a little bit terrifying to me, but as long as I wasn't feeling those contractions, I was great. My doctor had come in, my actual doctor had come in at about 4 and said, I'm going to let you do what you're doing. I think at that point I was still at about a 6. And he was like, if you don't start progressing faster, we're going to have to do a C-section. I was like, well, that just seems really odd. And then he was like, well, you see, every time you have a contraction, his heart rate drops, and that's going to stress him out, and we don't want him to be stressed. And I was like, okay. So at about 5 o'clock, he comes back in. I'm about a 7 at this point, and he was like, every time you have a contraction, his heart rate is dropping. It is not good for that to happen for too much longer because it's just stressing him out, and we don't want him to be stressed out whenever he's born. You're still at a 7, so we need to do a C-section. I was like, no way am I gonna have a C-section. Like, I didn't even think to consider a C-section the whole pregnancy. Like, I just knew I was going to be able to have a baby, and now I'm having a C-section. Like, what happened? So I was like, I just need a minute to think. I asked all of my family to leave the room. My uncle had actually called, and my uncle he was always like a father figure to me as I was growing up. My dad didn't live around me. He lived out of state. And my Uncle Jay was always there for me. So he had called, and he was like, I love you, and I know you love your son, and you just need to do what's best for him. And if this is what's best for him, you just need to do it. At that point, I was a little bit more calm and put together. I trusted the doctor. My Uncle Jay really made it clear in my head that it didn't matter how I got my baby into this world. I just needed him to be healthy. So at 5:30, he comes back in. He's like, so what did we decide? I said, I think it's time to have a C-section. And he said, that's great. He brought in papers for me to sign. The nurses got me a cap to put on. They were reeling me back. At about 5:45, 5:50, something like that. And I will say that my doctor, I don't have anything against him. I was really nervous, and he knew it. So, and if you've ever had a C-section, they don't let anybody come back there with you whenever they are prepping you. They only let your support person come in whenever you're already prepped and right before they start making their incision. So he knew I was really nervous. I was like shaking, and so the anesthesiologist was like having me breathe stuff in, and I could hear there was a radio on, and my doctor actually started singing the songs that were on the radio. Really funny, just to like ease my mind, to get my mind off of what was going on and to make me feel a little bit better. So that was really sweet. So my husband comes in the room. He was like, all right, we're just gonna go ahead and do this. So he is like, I could feel a little bit of like pushing on my stomach. I couldn't feel like cutting or anything, but I could feel them like pushing on my stomach. And so like I knew he was doing something. And then he pulls out my baby, and he's like, we have a beautiful baby boy. And I didn't see him. They didn't, like, I always see people like where they'll drop the curtain so you can see him, or where they like hang him over the curtain, and they didn't do that for me. They got him over to the warmers, and that was like right over there to where it was like in my eyesight and I could see. and I looked over and they were like cleaning him off and stuff, and they sat him up to where I could see him, and he was just so beautiful. It was my first baby. It was amazing. So it was fine. I had had a beautiful baby boy. He was healthy. He was screaming. He was doing good. And he was born at 6 pounds, 4 ounces, and 21 1/4 inches long. He was perfect. And then I got back to, before we left the operating room, they bundled him up and they put him on me, and I held him all the way to the room, and as soon as we got into the room, I started breastfeeding. He latched right away, and it was perfect. He does have a tongue tie and a lip tie, and no, I never got that corrected. It did cause me a little bit of pain for a while, but I got used to it, and he was eating just fine, so we didn't correct it. About 24 hours, no, not even 24 hours, I want to say it was about 15 hours after I had him, they wanted me to get out of bed. And this terrified me because I thought that, you know, I was going to rip open and all my guts were going to spill out, like, terrified. So they wrapped me up. No, they didn't wrap me up. Just kidding. I brought a belly band with me, and I put that on to kind of like support my belly because it felt really weird. And I did walk. I got up and out of my door and about 3 doors down before I walked back because it was just so painful. So painful. And it was the worst recovery of all of my births. I've had 3. Daniel, my C-section, was my first. I spent 5 days in the hospital because I had started running a fever on the 4th day, I want to say. So it was signs that I could be getting an infection, but I don't think I was. And Daniel had really bad jaundice. He was just a couple points away from it being like really serious, so he had to like sleep in the lights for a couple hours, and then they'd let me feed him, and then we'd have to put him back in the lights. It was terrible. And with my C-section, it did take me about a month to be considered normal, but I was not, like, I want to say, even to this day, which is almost 5 years later, I'm still numb on my scar. I don't feel any pain anymore, but I want to say I did have tender spots in it for about a year. So all of those mamas out there that prefer C-sections, you are stronger than me, because I can't do it. Like, I would never ever just choose to have a C-section. I would do a C-section 10 times over if it meant having my child safe and healthy and with me, but I would never choose to have a C-section. So I think I'm going to wrap that up right here. It is really late at night. I need to go wash my makeup off and get into bed with my baby and cuddle. And I do want to add that I will be doing both of my VBAC stories also, so stay on the lookout for that. Cade was a VBAC and Landon was my second VBAC, and I'll be doing stories on both of those labors soon. I just always really loved watching these videos, so I thought I'd throw my labor stories out there also. Go ahead and like this video if you did. Leave any questions that you have for us down below. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. There is a little red button down underneath my video on one of these sides, and it really helps my channel out a lot. Check back on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for more videos, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.